Chapter 1817. For Bailey Hongzhuang, she had never been a person who cared about her identity. As long as she treated people with sincerity, they were her friends. However, she had just arrived at the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall, and many people did not know her character. Naturally, they would not disturb her. If it was her, she would have the same idea. With the surrounding disciples leading the way, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two did not need to worry about not being able to find the place. As long as they followed everyone, they would be able to reach it. The martial arts field and the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall itself were not on the same mountain peak, but on a mountain peak next to the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. The whole mountain peak was raised to the ground from the top, as if there was a huge axe that cut the mountain in half, smooth and flat. A large and amazing martial arts field appeared. The open-air martial arts field was spectacular and huge. At a glance, one could see a group of disciples sitting on a futon and meditating. In a place further away, there was an empty training field with an arena in it. Seeing this scene, Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. As early as yesterday, they had already felt that Tiangang sect style was amazing, but when they saw this martial arts field, it was even more than before. Such a large martial arts field, it was really the first time they had seen it. The feeling of having so many cultivators meditating and cultivating at the same time was completely different. Oh my god, this is too shocking. Xia Jiqing couldn't help but sigh. After coming to Tiangang sect, she really felt that she had seen the world. She suddenly felt that 2 years ago, the disciples of Tiangang sect ridiculed them for not seeing the world. Perhaps it was somewhat reasonable. Because, before, their eyes had always been confined to a small range. When they participated in the assessment competition, they had already broadened their horizons, but now after seeing the various arrangements of Tiangang sect, their horizons were even wider. So many cultivators meditating together, I always feel that it is a very interesting thing. Bai Junyu's face was filled with a handsome and warm smile. On ordinary days, they would stay in their own houses to cultivate. There had never been so many people in the same place to cultivate. Therefore, he had a very novel feeling. Mutual supervision and encouragement is indeed very interesting. Bailey Hongzhuang's delicate and beautiful face was filled with appreciation. She sighed inwardly. 1,000 years later, the way the sect trained its disciples was indeed much better than 1,000 years ago. Let's go over quickly, we will cultivate here today. Xia Jiqing smiled. Looking at Xia Jiqing's excited face, Bailey Hongzhuang and Bai Junyu looked at each other and both of them smiled. Soon, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two entered the practice area. The moment Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two walked in, they could feel that the concentration of elemental energy here was roughly 2.5 times that of the outside world. The concentration of elemental energy in other parts of Tiangang sect was equal to twice that of the outside world. Although it was only a 50% increase, it was already very good. If he cultivated here for a long time, his cultivation speed would be much faster than in the outside world. In the middle of the entire training field, there was a pitch-black pillar. The name, cultivation level, and ranking of every cultivator was clearly recorded on the pillar. Chapter 1818. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two couldn't help but take a few steps closer along the passage, wanting to see their rankings. After all, they had to first understand their current level of strength in Tiangang sect. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two walked to the front of the ranking pillar, they looked for their names below. Soon, Bailey Hongzhuang found where her name was. Rank 581, Yellow Realm 7th level. Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu's rankings appeared in the 800th place, which was the real bottom. Seeing this scene, Xia Jiqing couldn't help but sigh. It seems that my judgment is really not wrong, I really am at the bottom. Although she had already expected such a result, she still couldn't help but have some expectations in her heart. She only hoped that her results were not so bad. However, the final result clearly told her that this was the truth, and it was useless to have any wishful thinking. Fortunately, the number of cultivators with the same cultivation is not small. As long as you break through one level, your ranking can be improved a lot. Bai Junyu smiled and comforted Xia Jiqing after seeing the frustrated look on her face. Such an outcome was within their expectations. After all, the other cultivators had been cultivating in Tiangang's sect for a while, and their cultivation was naturally much stronger than theirs. When the next time they recruited disciples, their strength would also be much stronger than the later cultivators. Listening to Bai Junyu's words, Xia Jiqing nodded and could only comfort herself like this. Such a result was really a bit shameful. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes stopped at the words Yellow Realm 7th level. Her current strength was no longer Yellow Realm 7th level. Since the end of the assessment, she had been working hard to cultivate and had not stopped. What's more, she and Beichen had been cultivating in the desert world during this time. With Beichen, Bailey Hongzhuang could also meditate in the desert world, but she needed someone to pay attention to the movements around her. At night, they went into the desert world and cultivated in the desert world for 3 days. When the 3 days were up, they came out during the day, so they had a good rest. When night fell, they once again entered the desert world. Under such circumstances, her improvement speed was very fast. What's more, her grandfather treated her exceptionally well after reuniting with her. He gave her a lot of cultivation resources. With these cultivation resources, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately used them. For the current her, the most important thing was to increase her own strength. Everything else was inconsequential. Under such circumstances, the speed of her and Beichen's improvement was obvious. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was wondering about this cultivation, a man walked in front of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two. The man was wearing a green robe. He was about 25 years old and had a dignified appearance. He was polite and refined. Junior sister Bailey, junior sister Xia, junior brother Bai, I am the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall's eldest senior brother. My name is Gui Jianyuan. Gui Jianyuan's face was filled with a friendly and polite smile, making people unable to feel the slightest bit of vigilance and disgust. The ranking pillar is a record of your cultivation at the end of the assessment. Now that 3 months have passed, the ranking is no longer accurate. Chapter 18-19. Gui Jianyuan's determined and calm face had a faint smile as he carefully introduced the ranking pillar to Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two. I see. Bailey Hongzhuang revealed a look of realization. Previously, she felt that the cultivation level recorded on the ranking pillar was not accurate. It turned out that she had to re-examine it. Gui Jianyuan nodded. Not bad, the ranking pillar's test is very accurate. Even for cultivators of the same cultivation level, the ranking pillar can still determine the ranking based on their origin power level. It's extremely accurate. As soon as he said this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two's eyes were filled with astonishment. They thought that cultivators of the same cultivation level would be ranked the same. They did not expect the ranking pillar to be so accurate. It was truly shocking. Thank you for telling me, eldest senior brother. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly bowed as a faint and charming smile appeared on her charming face. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang bowing to him, Gui Jianyuan hurriedly said, I don't dare, I don't dare. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. Senior brother Gui is my senior brother. It's only right for me to bow. Why would I not dare? Although it was her first time meeting Gui Jianyuan, Bailey Hongzhuang had a very good impression of him. This Gui Jianyuan spoke elegantly and had a very good attitude. It was no wonder that he could become the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall's eldest senior brother. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Gui Jianyuan was slightly stunned. After noticing that Bailey Hongzhuang's words came from her heart, his gaze changed a little. As the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall's eldest senior brother, he had the obligation to tell all the new disciples about everything here when they came here. After such a long time, he had long been used to it. In his opinion, being able to have the opportunity to help the new junior brothers and sisters was an extremely good thing. Perhaps it was because of his personality that he had always been very popular in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. He knew the identity of Bailey Hongzhuang, the future wife of the young master of Tiangang sect, who didn't know this identity. He had never come into contact with Bailey Hongzhuang. He only thought that Bailey Hongzhuang should be as high and mighty as Han Xiling. However, at this moment, looking at this approachable and beautiful woman in front of him, he really found it hard to believe that she was Bailey Hongzhuang. There was undoubtedly a huge difference from what he had imagined. However, such a Bailey Hongzhuang made it easier for people to have a good impression of her. Junior Sister Bailey, you can infuse your essence energy at the bottom of the ranking pillar to determine your ranking. Here, many cultivators will come here every time they make a breakthrough in their cultivation to see how far their ranking has risen, Gui Jianyuan said with a smile. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two nodded. Come to think of it, every disciple hoped that their ranking would rise quickly. Therefore, every time there was a little bit of progress, everyone would come here to test it. Eldest senior brother, thank you. Xia Jiqing thanked him. Gui Jianyuan waved his hand, as the eldest senior brother, telling you these is my duty. In the future, if there is anything you don't understand, or if you need help, just come to me. As long as I can help, I will not refuse. My room number is 1. Looking at such a calm and generous Gui Jianyuan, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two had a good impression of him. At least, after knowing Gui Jianyuan, they would be able to consult him if they didn't understand anything in the future. Chapter 1820. Gui Jianyuan's face was filled with a warm smile. After indicating that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others did not need to thank him, he returned to the futon and continued to meditate and cultivate. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two's eyes fell on the ranking pillar. They also had to reconfirm their ranking. Xia Jiqing was the first to go to the testing place. Her body's power surged out. Her right hand covered the bottom of the ranking pillar, and her power quickly poured into it. Then, a subtle light bloomed, and Xia Jiqing retracted her right hand. However, although Xia Jiqing rechecked, the ranking still did not change at all. Seeing this, Xia Jiqing sighed discouragingly, I'm really the last one. Although she already knew that she was the last one, after hearing Gui Jianyuan's introduction, she couldn't help but have some hope in her heart. Unexpectedly, the final result was exactly the same as before. There was no change. Looking at Xia Jiqing's appearance, Bai Junyu patted Xia Jiqing's shoulder and said, your ranking will rise soon, don't worry. Hearing this, Xia Jiqing nodded slightly, but there was still a bit of helplessness in her expression. Since Jiqing's ranking has not changed, there should not be any difference in my ranking. It's better to wait until I break through and then test again. Bai Junyu said slowly. In the 3 months of relaxation, they spent most of their time resting and visiting relatives and friends. Their cultivation base did not make much progress. Therefore, there was no need to test at all. Xia Jiqing then looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and said, Boss, do you want to test? She always felt that the strength of the boss was a bit stronger than when they were separated, but it was just her feeling and she couldn't judge. In terms of cultivation, the boss had always been extremely diligent. She had been with the boss for so long, and she had never seen the boss slack off in cultivation. Thinking about it, the boss should not have neglected her cultivation during the time she was in Tiangang sect. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly, her beautiful face shining with a bright smile. With her current strength, she was also at the lower level among the disciples of Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. However, she believed that it would not be long before her ranking would rise all the way. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang's right hand also covered the bottom of the ranking stone as the yuan power in her body quickly surged out. Following the emergence of this elemental energy, a faint but sparkling green light quietly appeared. Looking at this green light, Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu's eyes were filled with surprise. Why was Bailey Hongzhuang's test different from Xia Jiqing's test? Then, they noticed that Bailey Hongzhuang's ranking kept moving up and finally stopped at the 300th place. Bailey Hongzhuang, 300th place, Green Realm Level 1. Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu's eyes were fixed on the words green territory, and their eyes couldn't help but be filled with a strong sense of amazement. Green territory? Xia Jiqing's eyes widened, and her pretty face was full of disbelief. Boss, you actually broke through to the Green Realm? Bai Junyu also looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in a daze. This improvement was a little too shocking. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. I just broke through a few days ago. Boss, isn't your breakthrough speed a little too abnormal? It's such a blow to us. Chapter 1821. Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation speed had always been very fast. It was not only because her talent was strong enough, but also because of her hard work. Few people could compare to her. However, it had only been 3 months since the end of the assessment competition. Usually, people would take a good rest in these 3 months. After all, the days before were too hard. However, Bailey Hongzhuang did not seem to feel tired at all. No matter what the situation was, she never stopped cultivating. It was fine if she did not stop, but now that she had reached the first level of the Green Realm, she had completely left them behind. Hongzhuang, did you spend all your time on cultivation? Bai Junyu's expression was gloomy. He suddenly felt that he did not need so much supervision from Tiangang sect. As long as he was with Bailey Hongzhuang, there was no possibility of them slacking off. Thinking back to when they were in Azure Water School, their cultivation was about the same, but now Bailey Hongzhuang was much stronger than him. However, during this period of time, they had come together. It really made people sigh with emotion. Bailey Hongzhuang thought for a moment and nodded, more or less. Basically, I'm cultivating. She still had too many things to do. It would not do if she did not cultivate properly. Although the speed of her cultivation was already very fast, it was far from enough for her. She wanted to defeat Lan Qingyan. Lan Qingyan was older than her by a few years. Based on Di Beichen and Xiren's cultivation, Lan Qingyan should have reached the Green Realm. However, she had just broken through to the Green Realm. The gap between them was still very big. If she wanted to defeat Lan Qingyan fair and square, she had to put in more effort. All these years, Lan Qingyan had obtained her rainbow pearl and was still proud of herself in the Lan family. She thought that she was talented and was born to be a great person. Lan Qingyan even belittled and ridiculed her. In Lan Qingyan's words, Lan Yishuan was destined to die young. Who asked her parents to not take care of her? She deserved it. Only she was the true successor of the Lan family. After knowing the words that Lan Qingyan had once said, she decided that she must defeat Lan Qingyan in front of everyone. Not only for her, but also for her parents. She wanted to let everyone know that things that didn't belong to them didn't belong to them. Even if Lan Qingyan had snatched away what belonged to her, she could still crush Lan Qingyan. It was precisely because of this that she was exceptionally diligent in her cultivation. She had no time to waste. After hearing the words of Bailey Hongzhuang, Xia Jiqing couldn't help but be speechless. Boss, you've been separated from young sect master for such a long time and it's not easy for you to have a chance to get along. You actually spent all your time on cultivation. Aren't you a little too unromantic? Xia Jiqing had always thought that during this period of time, the boss and the young lord were together, they must be inseparable. But now, she realized that the situation was not like that at all. Bai Junyu didn't know what to say at this moment. He only felt that Hongzhuang didn't seem to need to rest at all. Bailey Hongzhuang, he was afraid that she was born to be a character. After all, even if many cultivators worked hard, they couldn't reach the level of Bailey Hongzhuang. Chapter 1822. Bailey Hongzhuang shrugged and said with a smile, Beichen won't care. She also wanted to travel with Beichen and have a good rest for a while. However, in this situation, it was obviously not easy to rest. Di Beichen would also understand her. For Di Beichen, she had always felt a little guilty. Di Beichen was too tolerant of her. No matter what, he always supported her as always. If there was no Bewitching's support, she would have had a harder time now. Fortunately, the lifespan of a cultivator was very long. As long as she rescued her parents and got her revenge, she could live with Bewitching in peace. She believed that Bewitching also thought so. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's natural look, Xia Jiqing was helpless. Boss, the young sect master really spoils you. You have to cherish it. If it was an ordinary man, I'm afraid that he wouldn't be able to stand the boss putting all her energy into cultivation. Xia Jiqing only felt that since she saw the young sect master, she felt that this was the real appearance of a good man. No matter what the boss did, the young sect master would always support her without any complaints. Just this point alone was already extremely difficult. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and nodded, I understand. She would cherish Bewitching because he was the person who would walk hand in hand with her for the rest of her life. Speaking of which, boss, isn't your cultivation speed a little too heaven-defying? Before, you were at Orange Realm 7th level. In just 3 months, your cultivation has increased by a full 3 levels. If this news is spread out, I'm afraid everyone will be shocked, right? Xia Jiqing was incredulous. She really didn't understand how the boss cultivated. This kind of cultivation speed would scare a lot of people to death. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly and did not answer Xia Jiqing's question. Although on the surface it seemed that she had only cultivated for a little more than 2 months, in addition to the time in the desert world, she had already cultivated for more than half a year. Moreover, with an abundance of cultivation resources, her speed of improvement was naturally extremely fast. We have to work hard. Otherwise, we don't know where Hongzhuang will leave us in the dust. Bai Junyu faintly sighed, his expression revealing a bit of amusement. If Gong Shaoqing and the others knew about the speed at which Bailey Hongzhuang had been plotting, their expressions would not be any better than theirs. Xia Jiqing nodded, looking serious and firm. Yes, we must work hard. She wanted to be boss's right-hand man, but with her current cultivation, she couldn't help at all, let alone be his right-hand man. Boss, you're already in the 300th place. You're definitely a powerful existence among the new disciples. I believe that even if those cultivators from aristocratic families were to come here, they would definitely be no match for you. Xia Jiqing's eyes flashed with excitement. Although her own strength was destined to be at the bottom, the boss's strength was very strong. She hadn't seen the other new disciples yet, but there was a certain competition between the new disciples. As long as the boss's ranking was high enough, then they would have the confidence. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly. It's not clear yet. We will only know when the other new disciples arrive. Chapter 1823. Bailey Hongzhuang was definitely the most popular person in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. Therefore, after Bailey Hongzhuang re-evaluated her ability, most of the cultivators had their eyes on the pillar. They wanted to know how Bailey Hongzhuang's results were. After all, the news that Bailey Hongzhuang was at Yellow Realm level 7 was just a rumor. None of them knew her real cultivation level. As a new disciple, Yellow Realm level 7 was not bad. However, as the champion of the assessment competition, everyone was still doubtful. However, when they saw Bailey Hongzhuang's ranking quickly rise and finally stop at the 300th place, the eyes of the disciples were filled with surprise. Green Realm Level 1. Bailey Hongzhuang has already reached the first level of the Green Realm. Wasn't she just Yellow Realm Level 7 previously? It's only been 3 months. How could Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly reach Green Realm Level 1? Could it be that the news from last time wasn't accurate enough? Green Realm Level 1. With such ability, she can be ranked in the middle in the entire Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. Bailey Hongzhuang's ability is not simple. I saw that she was getting along well with eldest senior brother just now. She seems to be much better than Han Xiling. That's not necessarily true. Who doesn't know eldest senior brother's character? No matter how bad the other party is, eldest senior brother will treat them with respect. Everyone was discussing. They had to admit that Bailey Hongzhuang's Green Realm Level 1 cultivation level made them speechless. At such a young age and with such a cultivation level, she was outstanding in both ability and talent. Compared to Han Xiling, they felt that Bailey Hongzhuang's ability was more outstanding. If Han Xiling was still alive, he would not be Bailey Hongzhuang's opponent. The disciples who originally wanted to use this incident to mock her were now silent. They felt that Bailey Hongzhuang and the young sect master were becoming more and more compatible. No one could find fault with them. "Boss, let's find a place to cultivate first," Xia Jiqing couldn't help but say after seeing the eyes of the disciples stop on them. After all the disciples were cultivating in the direction of the ranking pillar. The place where they were standing was undoubtedly where everyone was paying attention. As a result, it was a bit awkward. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly and smiled. "Okay, let's go together." The three people quickly walked to the back. The front seats were already filled with disciples. They just needed to find an empty seat to sit and cultivate. Casually finding 3 adjacent empty seats, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others sat down. Xia Jiqing smiled. Jiqing's realm level 1's cultivation level, Jiqing Yan Zhuang's, Jiqing's Jiqing realm level realm. Jiqing, realms Hongzhuang's realm cultivation level cultivation Hongzhuang, realm. The concentration of spirit energy in the small world was also equivalent to 2 times that of the outside world. She didn't expect that the concentration of spirit energy here would reach 2.5 times. The thing that left the deepest impression on her was the stairway to heaven that she encountered in the ruins. Cultivating in that kind of place where origin energy was dense, the speed of cultivation was simply shocking. Now she really missed the heaven stairway. If she could cultivate on the heaven stairway for a while, her cultivation would break through again. Chapter 1824. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 2 immediately began to cultivate on the field. After entering the state of cultivation, the whole field was quiet. In addition to the subtle sound of breathing, there were few other sounds. Bailey Hongzhuang happened to be in the desert world for 3 days at night. Before leaving the desert world, she also experienced a battle. She returned to the house and did not rest much before coming out. At this moment, meditating was also a kind of rest for her. Bailey Hongzhuang meditated for a whole day. The surrounding disciples came and went, but there were many disciples like Bailey Hongzhuang who stayed for a whole day. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang working so hard, Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu did not have any reason to slack off. They immediately immersed themselves in cultivation. If they wanted to catch up with Bailey Hongzhuang, there was basically no hope. However, at least they had to find a way to improve their ranking. This feeling of being at the bottom was very uncomfortable. They just wanted to improve their cultivation as soon as possible. Until the sky turned dark, Bailey Hongzhuang exited the state of cultivation. After such a long time of cultivation during the day, the yuan power in her body that had been exhausted had been completely replenished, and her energy had also been restored to its previous state. Now she found that her body's recovery speed was getting faster and faster. Whether it was yuan power or spirit, it was much faster than before. Although she had exercised her body in her previous life, she had never cultivated at such a high intensity. In fact, except for the existence of the Chaos Ring, there were very few such opportunities on ordinary days. And now, she gradually discovered the changes in herself during the process of cultivation. Bailey Hongzhuang stood up, but saw that Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu were still cultivating, and did not have the slightest intention to stop. "Junyu, Jiqing, I'm going back, what about you?" Bailey Hongzhuang lowered her voice and asked. The whole field was unusually quiet. If the voice was too loud, it would undoubtedly disturb other cultivators. Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu also exited their cultivation state. Xia Jiqing thought for a moment and said, "Boss, you go back first. I want to continue cultivating here." In the past 3 months, she had been too lazy. She couldn't continue to be lazy like this. Moreover, when she thought about how she was in the last place, she couldn't wait to throw away this title. This was simply too embarrassing. Good. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. It was a good thing that Xia Jiqing wanted to cultivate. Junyu, what about you? Bai Junyu looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, then looked at Xia Jiqing and said, I will also stay here to cultivate. Bailey Hongzhuang looked between Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu. After she left, she wanted to give Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu some opportunities to be alone. This was undoubtedly excellent. Then I will go first, you guys can do it. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. Di Beichen was still waiting for her to go back. If she didn't go back, she was afraid that Di Beichen would come to find her again. After Bailey Hongzhuang left the Vermilion Bird Hall, she quickly went in the direction of Di Beichen's palace. Chapter 1825. Before Bailey Hongzhuang arrived at Di Beichen's sleeping quarters, the three beasts had been eagerly waiting for their master's return. After coming out from the desert world today, they were simply too tired and fell into a deep sleep. When they woke up, the sky was already dark and their stomachs were rumbling. Di Beichen had already prepared dinner and was only waiting for their master to return. However, after waiting for a long time, they still had not seen their master's figure and were simply too anxious. It would have been fine if there was nothing to eat. However, the food was so close to them and they could even smell its alluring aroma. However, since their master had not returned, they naturally could not eat. This feeling was simply too torturous. Di Beichen was also standing outside the room. His extraordinarily handsome face was filled with confusion. They had already agreed to come over at night before Hongzhuang had left. Why had they not seen Hongzhuang's figure yet? Could it be that something unexpected had happened? After thinking of this possibility, Di Beichen felt that it was impossible. Bailey Hongzhuang would definitely be fine in the Tiangang sect. Why isn't master back yet? I'm about to starve to death. Xiao He rubbed its stomach. It felt as if it was going to faint from hunger at any moment. She should be back soon. Don't talk about being hungry. The more you talk, the hungrier you get. Xiao Bai sighed. Changing the topic was not so bad. If they focused on eating, they would only get hungrier the more they thought about it. Baisher looked at Xiao He and Xiao Bai, who had shriveled up into balls, with a helpless expression. Isn't master just a little late? You're already so hungry. As Baisher spoke, Xiao He and Xiao Bai glared at Baisher resentfully. You've already eaten the demon crystal. It's easy for you to say that. If you have the ability, don't eat the demon crystal. Baisher twisted its round body. It's your fault for not being able to eat it. You can't blame me for this. Xiao He and Xiao Bai glared angrily at Baisher. They were not as perverted as Baisher, who could break through by eating demon crystals. Oh right, Baisher, I think I saw you eating the demon crystals of the desert world. Xiao Bai narrowed its eyes at Baisher. Its master had already told Baisher about this long ago. It was best for Baisher not to eat the demon crystals of the desert world's demonic beasts before it could confirm if there was anything wrong with them. However, when it was in a daze and before it fully awakened, it had clearly seen Baisher and read demon crystals. Baisher could not help but be stunned when he heard this. He hurriedly said, Nonsense, I don't have it. However, Baisher felt guilty, calm. It had already eaten a lot of ordinary demon crystals. It only felt that the demon crystals of the demon beasts in the desert world tasted better. But Xiao's, Baisher's. Chapter 1826. After Di Beichen saw Bailey Hongzhuang appear, his beautiful face was filled with a smile. Now, Bailey Hongzhuang had changed into the Tiangang sect's disciple uniform. Obviously, everyone was wearing the same disciple uniform, but when Bailey Hongzhuang wore it, it gave off a different feeling. She was born to be a different person. No matter what she did or what she wore, she could give people a different feeling. Wearing the same clothes, Bailey Hongzhuang was always the most eye-catching thing. Di Beichen could not help but rejoice that he had captured Bailey Hongzhuang's heart early on. Otherwise, with Bailey Hongzhuang's outstanding appearance, she must have attracted countless wild bees and butterflies in the sect. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang appear, the three beasties quickly greeted her and jumped in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. "Master, you're finally back." Bai Shi could not hide the excitement on his face. Ever since they came to Tiangang sect, they had not been by their master's side all the time. On one hand, it was because their master was running around and it did not matter whether they went or not. On the other hand, they also wanted to give their master and Di Beichen some time to be alone together. Otherwise, it would be inconvenient for their master and Di Beichen to get along with each other if she always brought the three of them. "Master, I missed you so much." Xiao He jumped on Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulder and intimately rubbed against Bailey Hongzhuang's face. Xiao Bai also jumped on Bailey Hongzhuang's other shoulder. "Master, come back earlier next time." Looking at the three beasties suddenly being so intimate, Bailey Hongzhuang felt happy and puzzled at the same time. This was not in line with the three beasties' style. Previously, when they followed He Mu, they also did not see her for a period of time. At that time, she did not see the three beasties miss her so much. "Wife, you're back." Di Beichen's handsome face was full of smiles as he slowly walked to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. Hearing Di Beichen's words, Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly stunned. It felt really good to know that someone was waiting for his return. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. "I said I would come, why are you still waiting for me outside?" Although the distance from the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall to here wasn't short, with her speed, it wouldn't take long. Everyone was tired when we came out of the desert world. "I'll wait for you to come back so we can eat together." Di Beichen held Bailey Hongzhuang's small hand and walked into the house. When a cultivator's strength reached a certain level, they didn't need to eat on time like ordinary people. It was very casual. With Di Beichen's words, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately understood. "No wonder you're so enthusiastic. So it's because you want to eat." Bailey Hongzhuang narrowed her eyes and smiled at the three beasties. She knew that there must be some other reason why these three fellows suddenly missed her so much. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang had discovered their thoughts, the three beasties couldn't help but shrink their heads. They smiled brightly and said, "Master, we're telling the truth. We really miss you. A day without seeing you feels like 3 years." However, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't believe the three beasties' words at all. She understood these three beasties very well. Everything else was fake. The only real thing was that they wanted to eat. However, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't mind. Who asked her to raise 3 gluttonous contract beasties? Chapter 1827. The dinner Di Beichen prepared was very sumptuous, just like the nutritious dinner he prepared for Bailey Hongzhuang in the blood-ground abyss. Now that you have to run around and cultivate, you naturally need to nourish your body. Di Beichen served Bailey Hongzhuang a bowl of demonic beast bone soup. This kind of nourishment could also strengthen Bailey Hongzhuang's body. Bailey Hongzhuang took it with a smile. "This feeling reminds me of the time in the blood-ground abyss." In the blink of an eye, more than 2 years have passed. Di Beichen chuckled, "You're a busy person. Naturally, time passes unknowingly. But for me, wife, 1 day without seeing you is like 3 years, so I feel that these 2 years have been exceptionally long." Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly startled. She stared at Di Beichen's serious and joking face, and a complicated light flashed in her eyes. Speaking of which, during the time she was with Di Beichen, she was almost always busy doing things. On the contrary, it was Di Beichen who dropped all kinds of things to accompany her. After hearing Di Beichen's ambiguous and straightforward words, the three beasts couldn't help but narrow their eyes. "TSK, TSK, TSK, not suitable for children." Tsk, not suitable for demonic beasts. Tsk, not suitable, not suitable. The three beasts helplessly shook their heads. They knew that they were like third wheels here. Bewitching and Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes couldn't help but fall on the three beasts. These three guys were really good at ruining the atmosphere. Bewitching's indifferent gaze swept over the three beasts indifferently. I think you're already full, right? As soon as these words came out, the three beasts' expressions all changed, and then they all smiled. No, no. We didn't say anything. Eat, eat. The three beasts lowered their heads together, pretending that nothing had happened and continued to eat dinner. What a joke. They hadn't eaten their fill yet, so how could they leave just like that? Now, they could only count on Bewitching for their meals. They absolutely could not count on Bewitching. Otherwise, they would have nothing to eat in the future. Seeing how obedient the three beasts were, Bewitching nodded in satisfaction. Good girl. Seeing the smug look on Bewitching's face, Bailey Hongzhuang secretly scolded him. Bewitching had clearly grasped the weaknesses of the three beasts. Now, they could only obediently submit to Bewitching. Why didn't she realize that Bewitching was so two-faced in the past? Bailey Hongzhuang thought. However, she had already boarded the pirate ship. She could only continue like this. Bewitching, recently, as I've been training in the desert world for a longer period of time, I've realized that after leaving the desert world, the recovery speed of my energy and elemental energy has increased by a lot. Compared to the exhaustion after going in and coming out, it's obviously much better now. Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Hearing this, Bewitching nodded. Your body's adaptability is constantly improving, so your recovery speed is also constantly increasing. In the past, I heard from the sect leader that when a practitioner is in a training environment for a long period of time, his physical fitness will constantly improve. Your first recovery was very slow, but your 100th recovery speed is much faster than the first time. Chapter 1828. Bewitching's eyes were overflowing with joy. Hongzhuang's chaos ring was really magical. This desert world was undoubtedly an excellent place for them to cultivate. They could save a lot of time cultivating there. Previously, when Hongzhuang was participating in the assessment competition, he was worried that it would be too difficult for Hongzhuang to catch up with Lan Qingyan's cultivation. This was because Lan Qingyan started cultivating when she was 5 years old, but Hongzhuang only started cultivating when she was 14 years old. There was a gap of 9 years between the two of them. Even though Hongzhuang's cultivation talent was outstanding, Lan Qingyan's cultivation talent was not bad either. He did not doubt that if Hongzhuang and Hongzhuang had cultivated at the same age, then it would not be a problem for Hongzhuang to defeat Lan Qingyan. However, there was a gap of 9 years, and it was too difficult to cross this gap. Now, with this desert world, everything that was impossible had become possible. Hearing Bewitching's words, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes brightened. If everything was really as Bewitching said, then in the long run, it would be very beneficial to them. That's great. We have to go to the desert world to cultivate more. This way, we can also speed up our recovery. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Bewitching nodded slightly. That's right. Bewitching, do you know what kind of place the desert world is? Bailey Hongzhuang's eyebrows wrinkled slightly. This was something she couldn't understand. Could it be that it's a pocket dimension created by the Chaos Ring? After seeing the pocket dimension of the assessment competition, she was full of amazement towards it. Perhaps it was a pocket dimension created by the Chaos Ring. Hearing this, Bewitching's eyes were also filled with a hint of contemplation. He had been to the desert world many times, but he still did not have a definite answer. I can't tell if it's a pocket dimension because the monsters there are different from the monsters we usually see. Bewitching frowned slightly. He had never heard of such monsters until he saw them in the pocket dimension. Then, everything was real and not fake. Even if the desert world was a pocket dimension, how did these monsters appear? This was simply inexplicable. It was because of this that he could not tell. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Indeed, I have never seen the monsters there. Their demon crystals are also different. I have never heard of the existence of these monsters, so I can't tell at once. It would be better if I go to the library tomorrow and look around. Maybe I can find some relevant information by looking through the history books. Di Bei-chin said. He knew that all this time, Bailey Hongzhuang did not know much about the situation in the Chaos Ring. Because all of this was obviously arranged by the Chaos Ring, but it was something that they could not have predicted. They obviously did not know the origin of the Chaos Ring, but the desert world was simply too special. He did not believe that it was created by the previous owner of the Chaos Ring. Therefore, there should be some relevant information. There are a lot of books in Tiangang sect, and many historical things are recorded. However, since Hongzhuang did not know, it was probably something that happened thousands of years ago. Chapter 1829. Listening to Di Bei-chin's words, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. At present, this was the only way. Hopefully, they would be able to find information related to the desert world. The Chaos Ring was too magical, and there were too many things they did not understand. Therefore, they could only try to understand it bit by bit. Wifey, you went to the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall to meditate today. How did it feel? Di Bei-chin smiled at Bailey Hongzhuang, his eyes filled with concern and affection. Bailey Hongzhuang thought about the situation in the meditating field, then smiled and said, "It's pretty good. Everyone is working hard to cultivate." After seeing how hard everyone is cultivating, Jiqing and Junyu have not left the meditating field until now. Di Bei-chin nodded, his expression relaxed. The atmosphere of the meditating field can easily make cultivators work hard. If others don't leave, they won't leave either. It's because of this that the disciples' strength has improved a lot. This is really a good method. The disciples are all young and energetic. When they cultivate together, it's easy for them to compete with each other. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. One is marked by the company one keeps. When a lazy cultivator saw that all the cultivators around him were working exceptionally hard, he could not continue to be lazy. This was because he would feel a sense of anxiety in his heart. He was afraid that he would be left behind by everyone. Come to think of it, this was the most important reason for the existence of the meditating field. It seems that Jiqing and Junyu's speed of improvement should be very fast. Di Bei-chin chuckled. In my opinion, many people need to meditate, but only you don't. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly and looked at Di Bei-chin with slight surprise. Why do you say that? Everyone doesn't have enough motivation to cultivate on their own, so sitting in meditation is a great motivator for them. However, wife's daily efforts are already very astonishing. Whether or not you have a seat, it clearly doesn't have any effect on you. Di Bei-chin sighed. He was speechless at Bailey Hongzhuang's effort. It was likely that many heirs of powerful forces were not as hard-working as Hongzhuang. It was as if she didn't feel tired at all, or perhaps the word tired was simply not within her scope of consideration. She had put all her effort into cultivation, but she did not feel the slightest bit of hardship. However, looking at Bailey Hongzhuang like this, Di Bei-chin could not help but feel distressed. At the same time, he also understood how important it was to rescue Hongzhuang's parents. Hongzhuang was doing her best to improve her strength, so he only wanted to take good care of Hongzhuang in other aspects. At the very least, he had to keep up with the nutrition. Finding out where Yu Siqing had hidden Lan Yunxiao and his wife wasn't an easy task. Shitian Pavilion had already accepted this person for some time, but until now, they had not received any news. This was also within his expectations. After all, if it was really so easy to find out, he wouldn't have been searching for so long without any results. Now, they could only hope that Shitian Pavilion would spend more time to find out the location. Bailey Hongzhuang obviously knew this, but she had never said it out loud. Once she said it, she felt that there would be less hope. Chapter 1830. After dinner, Bewitching, Bailey Hongzhuang, and the three beasties rested for a while before entering the desert world again. Now that they were more and more accustomed to the desert world, they were no longer as panicked and worried as before. As the demonic beast's strength increased, so did Bailey Hongzhuang's battle prowess. Originally, Bewitching was very puzzled as to why Bailey Hongzhuang was able to grasp so many powerful martial techniques. But ever since he found out about Bailey Hongzhuang's true identity, he no longer had any doubts. He even felt that the martial techniques from 1,000 years ago were extremely powerful. Unfortunately, many of them had disappeared in the long river of history. However, in the following years, there were people who created extremely powerful martial techniques. While Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching were raising their cultivation in the desert world, Mo Yunjue was in a very bad mood. Why haven't we gotten any results after so long? Mo Yunjue frowned, his gloomy and cold eyes locked on the subordinate in front of him. It had been more than 2 months since he accepted this mission, but there was still no news. This was simply intolerable. He believed that Bailey Hongzhuang, who was currently in Tiangang sect, must be anxiously waiting for this news. Those were Bailey Hongzhuang's parents. After being separated for so many years, he finally had the chance to rescue them. However, he had sent people to investigate for so long but still couldn't confirm the final result. It was truly infuriating. Ever since the assessment competition ended, he had no more chances to see Hongzhuang. Now, there was only one thing, but he couldn't get any results. Hearing Mo Yunjue's furious voice, the man knelt in front of Mo Yunjue with his head lowered, his face filled with guilt. Young master, that Usiqing was truly too secretive. We investigated for a long time and confirmed that Lan Yunxiao and his wife are still alive. However, Usiqing was very secretive, even in the Yu clan, not many people knew about this. We've already done our best to investigate, but Usiqing is a sly old fox. Plus, this is something that happened more than a decade ago. It's not easy to investigate. Right now, not only have we planted spies near the Yu clan, we have also set our eyes on Lan Jingquang's family. Young master, please give us some more time. The man's tone was sincere and nervous. They never dared to neglect the young master's orders. Under the young master's orders, they had recently gathered people to investigate this matter. However, information about aristocratic families was one of the most difficult tasks to investigate, let alone a secret from more than 10 years ago. Once this news spread out, the Yu clan, Lan clan, and the entire cultivation world would be shocked. At that time, Usiqing would become the target of public criticism. With Usiqing's status, she naturally knew how important this matter was, so she hid it well. We must find out. Mo Yunjue's voice was firm and resolute. No matter what, he had to find out the specifics. He didn't want to make Bailey Hongzhuang wait for too long. Thinking about it, Bailey Hongzhuang must be burning with anxiety. Yes. The man hurriedly replied. As long as the young master was willing to give them a chance, they would definitely find out the exact location and not disappoint him. However, when they heard the news, they were also very shocked. Chapter 1831. In the following period of time, Bailey Hongzhuang would meditate and cultivate during the day and enter the desert world with Bewitching to cultivate at night. Under such circumstances, her speed of improvement was also very fast. Not only Bailey Hongzhuang, but Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu, after being stimulated by Bailey Hongzhuang, almost all of their thoughts were focused on cultivation. The cultivation resources given to them by Tiangang sect were extremely rich, and the biggest benefit was the Huayuan pill. This Huayuan pill was not used for eating, but for cultivation. There was an extremely pure yuan power in the Huayuan pill. When cultivating, you only needed to hold the Huayuan pill in your hand and run the cultivation method. The yuan power in the Huayuan pill would be absorbed into the meridians, thus strengthening the yuan power in the dantian. With the existence of this Huayuan pill, the cultivation speed of the cultivator would be a lot faster, and it would have the effect of getting twice the result with half the effort. The number of Huayuan pills given to them by Tiangang's sect was not small, but the number of Huayuan pills needed to cultivate was even more astonishing. They naturally could not have so many cultivation pills for them to cultivate all the time. Therefore, after using up the Huayuan pills in their hands, they could only rely on meditation to improve their cultivation. It was precisely because of this that the Huayuan pill could now be said to be the most attractive pill for cultivators. Bailey Hongzhuang also used the Huayuan pill when she cultivated, but in addition to the cultivation resources she received as a disciple, her grandfather gave her more cultivation resources. Thinking of all the good things that her grandfather had done for her, she also understood that her grandfather wanted to make up for all the things that he had not been able to take care of her for so many years. Originally, Bailey Hongzhuang could also refine the Huayuan pill by herself, but now the time could be said to be very tight, so she almost had no time to refine the pill. Alchemy was also a profession that she could not give up. However, she was now more focused on improving her cultivation. After all, the most important thing now was to improve her strength. The feeling of cultivating with the energy conversion pill is really too good. Now that I've used up all the energy conversion pills, just relying on meditation to cultivate feels really slow. Xia Jiqing faintly sighed. She had never felt the benefits of using the Huayuan pill before, but now that she felt that the feeling was really good. In comparison, without the Huayuan pill, his cultivation speed was undoubtedly much slower. Looking at Xia Jiqing's frustrated and helpless appearance, Bai Junyu smiled and said, "Jiqing, you have broken through not long after coming to Tiangang's sect. This cultivation speed is already very fast. A month will pass in the blink of an eye. After a few more days, we will be able to collect cultivation resources again." Hearing this, Xia Jiqing nodded. Now I can only think of it this way. I was too greedy. Now, she finally understood the difference between having and not having cultivation resources. With these cultivation resources, his cultivation speed could be said to be much faster. If she didn't have the cultivation resources given to her by Tiangang's sect before, she would have needed a certain amount of time to break through. However, in less than half a month, she had made another breakthrough. This speed was much faster than before. Bai Junyu chuckled, this is human nature. Now, with Bai Junyu and Xia Jiqing getting along, the relationship between the two was also a lot closer. Chapter 1832. Boss has been leaving in the evening recently. I think she must have gone to find Bewitching. Otherwise, with Boss's desperate temperament, she will definitely stay in the arena day and night. Xia Jiqing laughed. She had been with Boss for so long and had a certain understanding of Boss's character. It seemed that the existence of Bewitching still had a big impact on Boss. After experiencing so many things, now seeing that the relationship between Boss and Bewitching was so good, she was happy for Boss from the bottom of her heart. Yes, it should be like this. Bai Junyu couldn't help but think of the day when they went to get the cultivation resources. The young sect master had specially come to find Bailey Hongzhuang. In fact, they had only been separated for a short time, but the young sect master had specially come to find Bailey Hongzhuang. Just from this point, it could be seen how much the young sect master cared about Bailey Hongzhuang. The relationship between the young sect master and Hongzhuang is really enviable. In this world, there were not many lovers like the young sect master and Bailey Hongzhuang who had such a good relationship. Thinking of this, Bai Junyu couldn't help but look at Xia Jiqing. What about them? Noticing Bai Junyu's gaze, Xia Jiqing was slightly stunned for a moment, and a guess immediately emerged in her mind. However, Bai Junyu didn't say it in the end, and she didn't say much. At this moment, a man appeared in front of Xia Jiqing, with a polite smile on his handsome face. Junior sister Xia, I'm Ji Wenshu. I want to be friends with you. What do you think? The sudden voice made Xia Jiqing feel a burst of surprise. She raised her eyes and quickly stood up. However, after seeing the appearance of the other party, Xia Jiqing's eyes couldn't help but change, and her whole person was a little stunned. The man in front of her was not unfamiliar. It was the man they met on the way to the resource hall to get the cultivation resources a few days ago. At that time, she had glanced at the other party. She didn't expect that the other party would appear in front of her now. Senior brother Ji. Xia Jiqing bowed, her expression revealing a bit of fear and a bit of shyness. This shyness wasn't because she liked Ji Wenshu, but because she remembered what Ji Wenshu had said that day. After all, at that time, Ji Wenshu had already expressed his affection for her. Bai Junyu's gaze also landed on Ji Wenshu. When he heard Ji Wenshu's words that day, he had already remembered Ji Wenshu. After that, he didn't see Ji Wenshu come, so he didn't take it to heart. He didn't expect that Ji Wenshu would take the initiative to talk to Xia Jiqing today. He couldn't help but feel a sense of threat. Jiqing's looks had always been outstanding, and it was normal for men to like her. Ji Wenshu's appearance wasn't bad either, and he was probably stronger than him by a few notches. His refined and courteous appearance made it impossible for anyone to dislike him. Ji Wenshu didn't miss Xia Jiqing's slightly red face, and his eyes suddenly brightened. As early as the first time he saw Xia Jiqing, he felt that Xia Jiqing was his goal. However, these days, he had been thinking about how to get close to Xia Jiqing without appearing too abrupt or making Xia Jiqing feel disgusted. Chapter 1833. After thinking about it for a long time, Ji Wenshu decided to take the initiative to meet Xia Jiqing. If the young sect master's wife was here, he would have some restrictions, but the young sect master's wife left at night, so he decided to take advantage of this opportunity to get to know her. At this moment, seeing Xia Jiqing blushing, he was more and more sure that Xia Jiqing must have a good impression of him. Otherwise, Xia Jiqing would not blush at all. Thinking of this, Ji Wenshu felt a burst of joy. It seemed that this time, he really had hope. It has been a year since I came down to Tiangang sect. When I first saw junior sister Xia a few days ago, I was shocked. It's just that I have not been very good at communication, so it was not until today that I took the initiative to make friends with junior sister Xia. I hope that junior sister Xia can give me a chance to become friends. Ji Wenshu's face was filled with a faint warm smile, looking at Xia Jiqing with eyes full of appreciation and expectation. Noticing Ji Wenshu's undisguised gaze, Xia Jiqing was also very embarrassed. Although she usually had a carefree appearance, she had no experience in this kind of thing. Thinking about it, when a person expressed his affection for her without any disguise, there would always be a different feeling in her heart. Although Ji Wenshu said that it was only an opportunity to make friends, it was obvious that Ji Wenshu came with the purpose of pursuing her. Since we are both cultivating in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall, and senior brother Ji is my senior brother, we are friends. Xia Jiqing smiled. However, when she was talking, Xia Jiqing could not help but look at Bai Junyu. She wanted to know what kind of expression Bai Junyu would have in such a situation. Bai Junyu looked at Ji Wenshu in front of him and only felt very unhappy. As a man, he was very clear about Ji Wenshu's thoughts. Obviously, Ji Wenshu wanted to pursue Xia Jiqing. His intentions were so obvious, so open. If it was an ordinary person who was secretive, it might make people feel a little disgusted. However, in the face of such an open Ji Wenshu, who only had appreciation and admiration in his eyes, he simply could not find anything to hate. However, he was still very unhappy with Ji Wenshu, very, very unhappy. Over the past few days, his relationship with Jiqing had gradually improved. He had been looking forward to getting closer to Jiqing, but he hadn't expected Ji Wenshu to appear out of nowhere. The situation had become much more complicated. He didn't know how Jiqing felt about him, but the thought of Jiqing being with someone else was something he couldn't imagine and couldn't accept. Even though there were many thoughts in his mind, Bai Junyu's face did not reveal anything. After all, he could not show weakness in front of his love rival. After Xia Jiqing noticed that Bai Junyu's expression was natural and there was no change, her heart was a little more depressed. It seems that Bailey Hongzhuang and her previous judgment is wrong. Bai Junyu doesn't like her at all. If he really liked her, how could Bai Junyu turn a blind eye to her? Since junior sister Xia has agreed, then it is my honor. Ji Wenshu's face was brimming with joy and a handsome smile. We can keep in touch in the future. If junior martial sister Xia has any questions, feel free to ask me. I will tell you everything I know. Chapter 1834. Ji Wenshu left after chatting with Xia Jiqing for a while. After all, the cultivation field was not a suitable place to talk. A group of cultivators were working hard to cultivate. If they kept talking, it would undoubtedly affect the other cultivators. Xia Jiqing sat down and did not think much about it. She was ready to continue cultivating. Bai Junyu's performance just now really disappointed her. She felt that she should completely dispel this idea. Liking someone who did not like her was a very painful thing in itself. If Bai Junyu really did not like her, then she should get rid of it as soon as possible. Otherwise, if she continued to sink in such love, the only one who would suffer in the end would be herself. He seems to like you very much. Bai Junyu's voice quietly passed into Xia Jiqing's ears. Xia Jiqing's heart was even more painful, but there was no expression on her face. Maybe, he should be a good person. When her voice fell, Xia Jiqing no longer said anything and began to cultivate. After Bai Junyu saw that Xia Jiqing did not say much to him, his heart sank. He remembered Jiqing's shyness when she faced Ji Wenshu. When he thought of that scene, he felt a piercing pain. Xia Jiqing did not like him after all. From the first time he saw Xia Jiqing at Kanglan College, he liked her. Although Xia Jiqing was usually careless and spoke without scruples, he just liked Xia Jiqing's cheerful and sunny appearance. Unknowingly, they had been together for so long. He also wanted to confess, but Xia Jiqing's attitude made him unable to be sure of the answer. If he was wrong, he was worried that he could no longer be friends with Xia Jiqing in the future. After getting along for so long, he was also very familiar with Xia Jiqing's character. If Xia Jiqing hated someone, she hated that person from the bottom of her heart. If his confession was not successful, Xia Jiqing was likely to hide from him in the future. He did not want things to become like this. Now, after seeing Xia Jiqing's attitude, he was even more fortunate that his choice was not wrong. Otherwise, he was afraid that he would not be able to see Jiqing now, let alone cultivate with Jiqing. When Bailey Hongzhuang came to the field, she found that there was something wrong between Bai Junyu and Xia Jiqing. She couldn't help but frown. The three beasties had also followed Bailey Hongzhuang to the arena today. They had never seen the arena of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall, so they were very curious. Therefore, when Bailey Hongzhuang left Di Beichen's palace to practice, they immediately requested to follow Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang naturally didn't mind. The three beasts had always been with her. Wow, this meditation field looks really spectacular. Xiao Hei's eyes flashed with amazement. The dense crowd of cultivators sitting there gave off a feeling of vastness at first glance. As expected of the world-famous Tiangang sect, this is really a big deal. Xiao Bai also couldn't help but sigh. They had seen a lot of things, but this was the first time they had encountered such a situation. Thinking about it, it may be that their understanding of the sect had stopped thousands of years ago, so they felt unspeakable novelty about everything now. I feel that cultivating here is a very interesting thing. Chapter 1835. When the three beasts were looking around in amazement, the cultivators in the field also noticed the appearance of the three beasts, and their eyes were filled with surprise. The cultivators of the Tsanglan College are really amazing. Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu both have contracted wind spirit tigers. Bailey Hongzhuang actually brought 3 contracted beasts today. This is too difficult to accept. Originally, in the eyes of many cultivators, the Tsang College was just a remote place. Most of the disciples of Tian Gang Zong came from large dynasties, and there were almost no cultivators from small dynasties. However, the performance of Bailey Hongzhuang and her party was too special. Contract beasts were very rare, and ordinary people simply could not have a contract beast. However, when Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu each brought a wind spirit tiger to the field, everyone was already very surprised. Bailey Hongzhuang actually brought 3 contract beasts by herself today, which was really dumbfounding. I have seen these 3 contract beasts before in the shadow guard of the young master, He Mu. I did not expect them to come here with Bailey Hongzhuang today. Chapter 1836. Looking at the attitude of Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu, Bailey Hongzhuang's brows wrinkled even tighter. Something must have happened, otherwise Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu would not be like this. Just, what could have happened? The 3 beasts also noticed the attitude of Bai Junyu and Xia Jiqing, and immediately sat beside Bailey Hongzhuang. Master, there must be something wrong between Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu. I feel that the 2 of them are not in the right state. Xiao He curled her lips. With Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu's usual talkative character, they would talk for a long time when they saw them, but now the 2 of them did not react at all. This was the biggest problem. Because their performance was not like usual at all. Yes, there must be a problem, it's too strange. Xiao Bai nodded in agreement. Baisher lay on Bailey Hongzhuang's lap, his big round eyes flashing with a thoughtful light. I feel, the 2 of them seem to be sulking. Yes. They are sulking. Bailey Hongzhuang patted Baisher's little head. This time, he was really right, it was indeed like this. Chapter 1837. After Bailey Hongzhuang began to cultivate, the 3 beasts also sat beside Bailey Hongzhuang and began to cultivate. They hadn't seen Xiao Feng and Xiao Hu for a while, but before they came, their master had told them that they couldn't be loud here, so they didn't dare to say anything else. Xiao Feng and Xiao Hu were undoubtedly very happy to see the appearance of the 3 beasts. They immediately went to the side of the 3 beasts and intimately arched their bodies. The 5 beasts were in a mess, but in the end, they didn't dare to be too presumptuous and began to cultivate. While he was cultivating, time passed by extremely quickly. In the evening, Bailey Hongzhuang got up at this time as usual. She decided that she would have a good talk with Bai Junyu tonight. However, before that, she had to talk to Bewitching first. Otherwise, if she didn't go at this time, she was afraid that Bewitching would come to find her later. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was about to greet Bai Junyu and say that she had something to talk to him about in the evening, Xia Jiqing also stood up. Boss, I'll go back with you. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but be stunned for a moment, and a surprised light appeared in her eyes. You want to go back to the house? These days, Xia Jiqing had always gone back to the house with Bai Junyu. Why did she suddenly want to go back with her today? It seemed that the conflict between Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu was very serious this time. Xia Jiqing nodded slightly. I've been cultivating for so long today, I want to go back and rest. Okay, then let's go together. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't object. Xia Jiqing was her good sister, so she naturally had to take care of Xia Jiqing's emotions. After Bai Junyu saw that Xia Jiqing was about to leave, his brows wrinkled, and his expression was a bit complicated. Bailey Hongzhuang quietly gave Bai Junyu a look. Xia Jiqing was no longer here, so Bai Junyu simply left with them. Noticing Bailey Hongzhuang's meaningful glance, Bai Junyu also prepared to stand up. However, before Bai Junyu stood up, a figure had already appeared beside Bailey Hongzhuang and Xia Jiqing. Junior sister Bailey, junior sister Xia. Hearing this voice, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but turn around. They didn't know anyone else in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall other than their eldest senior brother. When Bailey Hongzhuang saw the appearance of the person behind her, she couldn't help but be surprised. "Isn't this?" Ji Wenshu smiled politely, but there was a hint of nervousness in his expression. "I'm Ji Wenshu, please advise me." He originally planned to wait for Xia Jiqing to go back at night and then go back with her. However, he didn't expect Xia Jiqing to go back in the evening. Although he had a certain fear of Bailey Hongzhuang in his heart, he still came after thinking about it. He already knew that Xia Jiqing and Bailey Hongzhuang had a very good relationship. Since he wanted to pursue Xia Jiqing, then Bailey Hongzhuang would know sooner or later. As a result, there was no need to hide at all. On the contrary, being frank would give people a good impression. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. "Senior brother Ji, it's nice to meet you." After hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Ji Wenshu was also somewhat flattered. Chapter 1838. This feeling really made Ji Wenshu feel flattered. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's sincere smile in front of him, he suddenly felt that everyone's rumors about Bailey Hongzhuang were simply biased. Bailey Hongzhuang did not have the slightest bit of arrogance, nor did she seem like someone who specialized in seduction like everyone said. She looked like a lotus flower that was not stained by the mud. Every frown and smile revealed elegance and beauty. "I'm also very happy to meet you," Ji Wenshu said with a smile. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes looked back and forth between Ji Wenshu and Xia Jiqing for a moment. Ji Wenshu's feelings for Xia Jiqing had already been understood the last time. She suddenly understood why the atmosphere between Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu had suddenly become so strange. She was afraid that it had something to do with Ji Wenshu. Bai Junyu was originally preparing to stand up, but the moment he saw Ji Wenshu appear, he sat back down again, closed his eyes and pretended to cultivate. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed faintly. The relationship between Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu was really full of twists and turns. It really could not continue to be delayed. "Junior sister Xia, I also want to go back to the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. Do you mind if I go back with you?" Ji Wenshu smiled warmly and asked in a low voice. Hearing this, Xia Jiqing thought for a moment. She looked at Bai Junyu from the corner of her eyes, but saw that Bai Junyu had already entered a state of cultivation. Her heart was even more annoyed. "Okay." Xia Jiqing's face was filled with a bright smile, and there was no reluctance in her expression. After seeing Xia Jiqing agree, Ji Wenshu was even more happy. "That's great. Let's go." Xia Jiqing nodded and immediately pulled Bailey Hongzhuang together with Ji Wenshu in the direction of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. The three beasts sat on Bailey Hongzhuang's body. They felt very helpless about the feelings in front of them. Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu sulking each other was clearly letting others take advantage of them. It was simply infuriating. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two walked out of the cultivation field, Bai Junyu turned around and looked in the direction of Xia Jiqing's departure. His expression was gloomy. After Bailey Hongzhuang walked out of the cultivation field for a distance, she said to Xia Jiqing and Ji Wenshu in front of her, "I'm going to the young master's palace now, you can go back first." Hearing this, Xia Jiqing nodded slightly, "Okay." She naturally knew that the young master and the young master were lovers and had dinner every day. Ji Wenshu's heart was also happy. He was looking for an opportunity to learn more about Xia Jiqing. But because of Bailey Hongzhuang's presence, he couldn't say much. Now that Bailey, he was more, he had no doubt that Xia Jiqing was a little more. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Xia Jiqing and Ji Wenshu. They were already very close to the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. There should not be any problems, so she left with peace of mind. "Master, this Ji Wenshu seems to be a good person. He should not be a bad guy." Xiao He looked at Ji Wenshu's back and said, "Whether he is a bad guy or not is not the most important thing. The most important thing is that Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu are a couple." Xiao Bai said helplessly. They could not let outsiders steal Bai Junyu's woman. Master will definitely find a way to help solve it. Bai Shi looked indifferent. With the relationship between Master and Xia Jiqing, he would never let this matter go. Chapter 1839. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang had already made up her mind, the three beasts no longer said anything. In fact, they felt that no matter how much conflict there was between Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu, they were still an inseparable pair in the end. It was just that the temperaments of these two people were too special. As usual, Di Beichen was waiting for Bailey Hongzhuang to have dinner together, but today Bailey Hongzhuang came back a little later. The three beasts had already rushed towards the delicious food. Previously, they were focused on Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu. Now that their attention had been diverted, they only felt hungry. Beichen, I may not be able to go to the desert world with you tonight to cultivate. Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Hearing this, Di Beichen raised his beautiful eyebrows and said, "What's the matter?" Jiqing and Junyu are in conflict again. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed faintly, her delicate and perfect face showed a bit of helplessness. Di Beichen frowned. They have been cultivating in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall for a while, but they still haven't expressed their feelings. Earlier, he had already learned about the things between Bai Junyu and Xia Jiqing from Bailey Hongzhuang's mouth. When he went to the Kanglan College to find Bailey Hongzhuang, he had already discovered that Bai Junyu liked Xia Jiqing. However, at that time, Xia Jiqing did not show too much love for Bai Junyu. Some time ago, he heard Hongzhuang say that Xia Jiqing liked Bai Junyu. It was reasonable to say that these two people should be together naturally. How could it be delayed for so long and they still haven't been together? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. It seems that they haven't been together yet. Then the two of them are really good at delaying. Bai Junyu is too timid in this kind of thing. Di Beichen's handsome and elegant face also showed a trace of helplessness. Men should take the initiative in this kind of thing. Maybe it's because he's been in love with Jiqing for so long that he's become timid. Sometimes, when you like someone too much, your courage will become smaller and smaller, afraid that you will be rejected. Di Beichen shook his head. A man has to have courage. If a woman likes him, his confession will naturally succeed. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. What if you don't like it? If he continues to chase after her shamelessly, he will definitely succeed. Di Beichen raised his fist confidently. The three beasties also looked at Di Beichen speechlessly. Speaking of which, when Di Beichen was pursuing Bailey Hongzhuang, he had really implemented this point perfectly. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been so easy to gain his master's trust. Bailey Hongzhuang understood that Di Beichen had already seen through this point, which was why he was pestering her to the extreme. Beichen, I'm very curious about a question. Bailey Hongzhuang stared at Di Beichen, her pretty face full of doubts. What question? How did you train your skin to be so thick? For a young sect master to be able to do this like Di Beichen, there should be very few existences. I was born with it. Di Beichen teased. Pft, cough cough. Bailey Hongzhuang, who was drinking soup, choked after hearing Di Beichen's words. Chapter 1840. With Di Beichen's voice falling, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes also changed a bit. As Di Beichen said, Di Beichen had never shown such a posture in front of others. Except in front of her. In fact, she felt that what Di Beichen said was right. As a man, he should take the initiative and be full of courage in this aspect. Women have always been passive in this aspect. Except for a few women who dared to take the initiative to confess, other women hoped that their beloved man would confess to them. Even women like Xia Jiqing and Yuan Xiaoman, who were proactive, did not take the initiative to speak in this matter. At this time, Bai Junyu needed to summon up his courage. I originally thought that after this period of time, they would slowly break through this layer of window paper. However, recently, a man who likes Jiqing appeared in the Vermilion Bird Palace, so there was a misunderstanding between them. Bailey Hongzhuang stared at Di Beichen, and then said, I don't think it's a good idea for them to continue like this. It's better for me to talk to Junyu. As long as Junyu's feelings are confirmed, then this matter will have an answer. Hearing this, Di Beichen frowned slightly. You want to talk to Junyu alone? Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly stunned, and quickly said, Junyu is Jiqing's sweetheart, I'm just going to matchmake them. It's not convenient for a married woman to chat with other men in the middle of the night. Di Beichen's voice was gentle and overbearing, and his tone had already explained everything. Vinegar jar. Bailey Hongzhuang stared at Di Beichen. She had never seen Di Beichen like this before. In this regard, Di Beichen did not care much, but said sanctimoniously, Wife, it's better for them to deal with things between them. I feel that they can't handle this matter at all. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed. If the problem between Bai Junyu and Xia Jiqing could be solved by itself, then it would have been solved long ago. Now that there's another Ji Wenshu, I feel that this conflict will continue to expand. Both of them were taciturn when it came to such matters, and that Ji Wenshu seemed to be very proactive. If this continues, I'm afraid the situation will only get worse. She had already seen it today. In order to anger Bai Junyu, Xia Jiqing deliberately went back with Ji Wenshu. This was to give Ji Wenshu a chance to take advantage of this loophole. With Jiqing's feelings for Junyu, it was impossible for her to like someone else. If she continued like this, she would only hurt herself and delay Ji Wenshu. This Bai Junyu is really worrying. Di Beichen shook his head. He and Xiren were both very proactive people in their relationships. They had never seen someone like Bai Junyu who didn't dare to confess. Since that's the case, I'll go and have a chat with Bai Junyu tonight. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with a hint of surprise. You're going to talk to Bai Junyu? Di Beichen nodded slightly. It's more convenient for a man to talk to another man. You can rest assured that I will achieve the effect you want. Looking at Di Beichen's confident appearance, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but chuckle. Then I'll give you this important task. No problem. Di Beichen laughed. Leave it to me. Chapter 1841. Wifey, I'll go talk to Junyu tonight, and you can go talk to Jiqing. I hope they can talk to each other earlier, so that they can be happy earlier. Di Beichen's face was filled with a handsome and warm smile. During this time, he could see Bailey Hongzhuang every day, and the two of them were together, which was a kind of happiness for him. When Bailey Hongzhuang was not around, he always felt that his heart was missing a piece. It was not until Bailey Hongzhuang came back that his heart was filled and his whole person was complete. As long as the two of them were together, it was a kind of happiness. He naturally hoped that Bai Junyu and Xia Jiqing could talk about everything earlier and be together well. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the smile on Di Beichen's face and couldn't help but be stunned. Di Beichen was a peerless beauty, and at this moment, seeing Di Beichen's smile, she only felt her heart beat. The Di Beichen in front of her was very different from the usual. It was an indescribable sense of satisfaction, but it was more charming. Di Beichen saw Bailey Hongzhuang looking at him in a daze, and the smile on his lips could not help but widen a little. It seems that wifey likes my face very much. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Not only your face, I like everything about you. Di Beichen's eyes became more and more gentle. The praise of others was nothing to him, only Bailey Hongzhuang's praise would make him happy. The three beasts were also very happy now. During this time, they went to the desert world every night for 3 days to cultivate, and they recovered their strength during the day. It could be said that they were very tired. Today, their master and Di Beichen were going to talk to Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu, so they could take advantage of this opportunity to have a good rest. When they participated in the assessment competition, although they were busy every day, they were not so tired. Compared to that, this was the real hardship. However, they also understood the reason why their master was working so hard, so they had no complaints. In their eyes, their master had never felt tired. On the contrary, he was very happy to enter the desert world to cultivate. Come to think of it, this was probably because Bewitching was by Master's side. The 3 light bulbs followed beside them, but they could feel their affection. It was so boring. After eating dinner, Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching rested for a while before heading towards the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. The moonlight was bright and clean, covering the entire land like a thin veil, adding a hint of hazy beauty. Bewitching held Bailey Hongzhuang's hand and walked leisurely. Strolling in this environment was also a kind of enjoyment. Beichen, I really hope that we can be like this in the future, strolling under the moonlight, leisurely accompanying each other until we grow old. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her head to look at the bright moon as a faint smile slowly appeared on her lips. Such beauty, such a scene, she couldn't help but think of the most beautiful fantasy in her heart. Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Bewitching clasped Bailey Hongzhuang's small hand, definitely. In the future, I will accompany you to do everything you want to do. The warm and magnetic voice was full of enchantment. Bailey Hongzhuang felt as if she had heard the most beautiful words in the world. She thought that love was like this, having a person willing to accompany you all your life. Bewitching's mood was also very good. Now that Hongzhuang was by his side, he had no other requests. Chapter 1842. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching arrived at the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall together, the eyes of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall disciples fell on Bewitching. Greetings, young sect master. Greetings, young sect master. Along the way, all the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall disciples who saw Bewitching would bow and greet him. Bewitching nodded his head one by one. When the crowd saw that Bewitching and Bailey Hongzhuang had such a good relationship, they were somewhat envious. Flying to the branch to become a phoenix, this kind of thing was extremely difficult in itself, and there was the possibility of change at any time. However, now that more than 2 years had passed, the young sect master's feelings had not changed. From this, it could be seen how much the young sect master liked Bailey Hongzhuang. Therefore, they were now only envious of Bailey Hongzhuang. After all, Bailey Hongzhuang was able to make the young sect master like her for so long, and it was not entirely relying on her appearance. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching were a pair of lovers in Tiangang sect, Bewitching and Bailey Hongzhuang did not need to hide their relationship. Bailey Hongzhuang led Bewitching to her residence. After entering Bailey Hongzhuang's supplies, Bewitching found that Bailey Hongzhuang had decorated the room very fresh and elegant. In his opinion, the area of the room was not large, but through Bailey Hongzhuang's decorations, he had a warm feeling. Sit for a while first. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. Later, you will look for Bai Junyu first, and then I will look for Jiqing. Bewitching nodded. I'll ask Junyu to go outside and have a chat. It's not good for 2 men to talk in the house. As soon as he said this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but laugh. It wasn't a big deal, but after listening to Bewitching's words, she felt a little strange. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's smile, Bewitching was also very happy. Now that he was with Hongzhuang, Hongzhuang was smiling more and more. As long as Hongzhuang was happy, it was a kind of satisfaction for him. A moment later, Bewitching went to the next room to look for Bai Junyu. Young sect lord. Bai Junyu was obviously surprised to see Bewitching appear. He never thought that Bewitching would actually come looking for him. Bewitching nodded slightly and said, let's go out and have a talk. Bai Junyu was a little puzzled at first, but he couldn't help but think of Bailey Hongzhuang and what happened today, and suddenly understood a little. His mood was very complicated now, but no matter what others said to him, it would be useless. However, since the young sect lord came looking for him, he naturally had to listen. Bai Junyu followed Bewitching out of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. Bewitching didn't go far, and directly went to the back mountain of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall with Bai Junyu. Young sect lord, what do you want to talk to me about? Along the way, Bewitching didn't speak. After stopping, Bai Junyu couldn't help but take the lead to speak. Bewitching directly sat down on the grass, and at the same time took out 2 wine jugs from his qianquan bag. He handed one of them to Bai Junyu and said, "Sit." Looking at the wine, Bai Junyu couldn't help but smile, and immediately sat down with Bewitching. Cheers. Bewitching didn't go straight to the main topic. There were different ways for men to chat. After 3 rounds of wine, everything would be clear. On the contrary, if they started talking about this topic, Bai Junyu would probably feel very uncomfortable. Chapter 1843. Junyu, you like Xiaojiqing, right? While drinking, Bewitching slowly said. However, his eyes were not looking at Bai Junyu, but at the bright moon in the sky. Listening to Bewitching's words, Bai Junyu hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Yes, I like her. He liked Xiaojiqing from the first time he saw her more than 3 years ago. At that time, Xiaojiqing wanted to enter the special enrollment class, so he worked hard to ask the tutor to give Xiaojiqing a chance to be assessed. On the one hand, he hoped that Xiaojiqing could achieve her wish. On the other hand, he also hoped that he could be closer to Xiaojiqing. The final situation was as expected. He had always been in the same team with Xiaojiqing and could often see Xiaojiqing smile. However, the distance between them had never shrunk. At the beginning, he was very clear that Xiaojiqing did not like him at all. However, as the time they spent together grew longer, he sometimes had an illusion that Xiaojiqing liked him, but today, it seemed that all this was just his imagination. Since you have liked her for so many years, why not express your feelings? Bewitching looked at Bai Junyu. He really did not understand why Bai Junyu had not expressed his thoughts on this kind of thing. Hearing this, Bai Junyu's eyelids drooped slightly, his expression revealing an unspeakable bitterness. She doesn't like me. If I confess, I'm afraid she will have to avoid me in the future. With Bai Junyu's voice falling, Bewitching could not help but think that Bai Junyu was stupid. They, as outsiders, had long understood the situation, but Bai Junyu still didn't understand it until now. After a long time, it turned out that Bai Junyu had always thought that Xiaojiqing did not like him. No wonder he did not dare to confess. Who said she doesn't like you? Bewitching said. If she liked me, she wouldn't have left with another man today. Bai Junyu's lips pulled out a smile, but this smile always revealed a bit of sadness. Today, the image of Xiaojiqing leaving with Ji Wenshu had been deeply imprinted in his mind. He always felt that in the future, Xiaojiqing would be like today, leaving with a man and disappearing from his world forever. When he thought of this, he couldn't help but feel vexed. He really didn't want to see such a thing happen. He only felt an indescribable pain in his heart, making it difficult for him to breathe. Bewitching sighed. He had seen people who were slow to love, but he had never seen someone so slow to love. Bai Junyu, are you stupid? Bai Junyu looked at Bewitching doubtfully. He did not understand why Bewitching suddenly said such words. We can all tell that Jiqing likes you. You're the one who's been making her wait. As a man, what are you afraid of? If you confess, maybe you'll succeed. At least Jiqing will know your feelings. If you don't confess, then you can only watch as Jiqing is taken away by another man. You don't even have the right to speak. In my opinion, you're not as good as Ji Wenshu who just appeared today. When Ji Wenshu first met Jiqing, he had already directly expressed his feelings. This is a real man. Bai Junyu listened to everything Bewitching said, and his whole person was a little stunned. Chapter 1844. You and Jiqing have been together for so many years. No matter how you look at it, you have an advantage over Ji Wenshu. Ji Wenshu just appeared today and is still a stranger. Are you already discouraged and feel that you can't compare to him? Bewitching frowned. If you really have no confidence in yourself, you might as well give up early. Jiqing is just a woman. If you don't take the initiative to express your feelings, do you want Jiqing to take the initiative to express her feelings to you? In the face of such a stupid Bai Junyu, Di Beichen was also helpless to the extreme. Originally, he thought that it was best for them not to intervene in other people's feelings. However, now it seemed that Bailey Hongzhuang was right. If they did not intervene in this matter, he was afraid that Bai Junyu and Xia Jiqing would not be able to really be together. Di Beichen's words were like an alarm bell that woke Bai Junyu up. He looked at Di Beichen and felt that everything Di Beichen said was very correct. He had never thought about this problem before. He just analyzed Xia Jiqing's daily behavior to see if Xia Jiqing liked him or not. However, the answer he got in the end was that she did not like him. Perhaps, he really should be brave enough to express his feelings to Xia Jiqing. No matter what the final result was, at least, he would not let himself regret it. If Jiqing was chased by other men and he did not express his feelings from beginning to end, then he would definitely regret it in the future. He did not believe that he could not even compare to Ji Wenshu. No, I never felt that I was inferior to Ji Wenshu. Bai Junyu said resolutely. This was his dignity. For this new Ji Wenshu, he only felt that he was not worse than Ji Wenshu. Although Ji Wenshu's current strength was stronger than his, as long as he was given a certain amount of time, he would definitely become a better person than Ji Wenshu. The most important thing was that he had a heart that would always be good to Xia Jiqing. On this point, he believed that Ji Wenshu was absolutely incomparable to him. Ji Wenshu and Xia Jiqing had just met. At most, it could only be called good feelings and love. But he loved Xia Jiqing. The two were completely different. After hearing Bai Junyu's words, Di Beichen nodded. At least, Bai Junyu hadn't lost his fighting spirit as a man. For men, love was also a battlefield. They absolutely couldn't admit defeat before they put in the effort. In that case, you can compete fairly with Ji Wenshu. Ji Wenshu has already begun to move, yet you're still here feeling depressed. If you continue like this, you'll definitely lose, Di Beichen said slowly. He believed that as long as Bai Junyu was filled with confidence and fighting spirit, then the problem would not be far from being solved. Bai Junyu stared at Di Beichen and said, I understand. Di Beichen's words, for him, were like an epiphany. Originally, he did not understand, but in an instant, he understood everything. Even if his confession failed, he could still work hard. He believed that as long as Xia Jiqing saw his sincerity, she would definitely choose to agree with him. If he didn't work hard now, there would be nothing left. His mind kept replaying the scene of Xia Jiqing and Ji Wenshu leaving together. As he recalled those scenes, he felt an indescribable pain in his heart. Chapter 1845. Young Sect Master, thank you. Bai Junyu stood up and looked at Di Beichen gratefully. If it weren't for Di Beichen reminding him today, then he really didn't know when he would have understood this point. At that time, if Xia Jiqing really left with someone else, it was definitely something he couldn't bear. Now, he decided to work hard. No matter what the final result was, he would work hard. Listening to Bai Junyu's words, Di Beichen knew that Bai Junyu really understood all this. This was undoubtedly an excellent result, this kid was not too stupid. I was also entrusted by others to do this. Originally, Hong Zhuang was going to tell you, but I think it is more convenient for us men to talk about it, so I came. Hong Zhuang is now talking to Jiqing, you should seize the opportunity. Di Beichen chuckled. He didn't tell Bai Junyu that Xia Jiqing also liked him. As long as Bai Junyu took the initiative to break this layer of window paper, then the two could be together. He felt that if he didn't tell Bai Junyu now, it would make this thing more interesting. After all, when the two of them were truly together, everything would be a beautiful memory. With Di Beichen's voice falling, Bai Junyu understood that Hong Zhuang had been worried about their affairs. It's really shameful to say that from the beginning to the present, Hong Zhuang has always been helping us. I didn't expect that now even this emotional thing needs Hong Zhuang to worry about, I'm really. Bai Junyu felt guilty. Along the way, Bailey Hongzhuang had helped him too much. If it weren't for Bailey Hongzhuang, he wouldn't be a member of Tiangang sect now, nor would he be able to bring glory to his ancestors. If Bailey Hongzhuang had not appeared, then his life would have been completely different. It would have been impossible for him to be like this. He never thought that when it came to feelings, Bailey Hongzhuang had already seen it clearly, but he was still so weak. You and Jiqing are both good friends of ours. Naturally, we hope that both of you will have a happy ending. Di Beichen patted Bai Junyu's shoulder. He had said what he needed to say. What to do next would depend on Bai Junyu himself. If Bai Junyu still didn't know what to do at this point, then Bai Junyu would really be a fool. A smile appeared on Bai Junyu's face. To them, being able to meet Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen was their fortune. While Di Beichen and Bai Junyu were chatting, Bailey Hongzhuang also found Xia Jiqing. Knock knock. Bailey Hongzhuang knocked on the door of Xia Jiqing's room. When Xia Jiqing opened the door and saw Bailey Hongzhuang, her pretty face couldn't help but be surprised. Boss, why did you come back so early today? Usually, the boss stayed in the young palace master's palace and didn't come back so early. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's pretty face was filled with a touch of helplessness. Aren't I worried about you and Junyu? Xia Jiqing's face was gloomy in an instant, and she said sullenly, between me and him, there is nothing to worry about. Bailey Hongzhuang walked into the room, and Xia Jiqing was still angry with Bai Junyu. Chapter 1846. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with a smile as she teased Xia Jiqing. No matter how magnanimous and calm a woman was, once she was in love, she would become sensitive and stingy. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's teasing look, Xia Jiqing couldn't help but say angrily, Boss, now that the situation has become like this, you are still in the mood to tease me. Her mood now could be described as extremely bad. When she thought of Bai Junyu's indifferent appearance, she couldn't help but feel angry and lost. She wanted to let it go, but after coming back, she had been thinking about it and couldn't get rid of it. She wanted to meditate and cultivate, but she found that she couldn't calm down at all. Not to mention that she couldn't achieve any results in her cultivation, she might even go crazy. Therefore, in such a situation, she could only be in a daze, which was really depressing. Okay, I won't tease you anymore. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at her and said, Why did you come back with Ji Wenshu today? How did you and Junyu get into a conflict? Xia Jiqing looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and then opened her mouth. Bailey Hongzhuang had always been the most trusted person in Xia Jiqing. What's more, Bailey Hongzhuang had already known her thoughts, so there was no need to hide it. Today, senior brother Ji came to greet me and said that he wanted to be friends with me. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and stared at Xia Jiqing, but there were already some guesses in her heart. I know that senior brother Ji likes it, but in such a situation, Junyu didn't react at all, as if he didn't care about it. He doesn't have me in his heart at all. Otherwise, he shouldn't have such an attitude when encountering such a thing. Xia Jiqing frowned. When she thought of the scene that happened during the day, her heart was blocked. Then what kind of reaction do you think Bai Junyu should have? Bailey Hongzhuang didn't answer immediately, but asked. Hearing this, Xia Jiqing hesitated and said, At least you should show some reluctance. Bailey Hongzhuang faintly sighed. Bai Junyu and Xia Jiqing were both extremely proud. They obviously cared about it, but on the surface, they all pretended not to care. If Bai Junyu was really capable of that, then the two of you wouldn't have wasted so much time on each other. Xia Jiqing looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in confusion. She didn't understand what Bailey Hongzhuang meant. Were you unhappy when you left with Ji Wenshu? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. Xia Jiqing nodded her head. She was naturally not happy. Although Ji Wenshu should be a good person and a very charming man, she only had Bai Junyu in her heart. There was no room for anyone else. Therefore, no matter how outstanding Ji Wenshu was, it was meaningless to her. After all, once you like a person, you always think that he is the best no matter what. Seeing Xia Jiqing's answer, Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. But I saw you and Ji Wenshu talking happily when you left together. I couldn't see any unhappiness at all. As soon as these words came out, Xia Jiqing was slightly stunned and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang stupidly. Chapter 1847. Bailey Hongzhuang could be sure that after Bai Junyu saw the scene of Xia Jiqing and Ji Wenshu leaving together, he was afraid that his heart was already depressed to the extreme. However, Bai Junyu was a person who cared about his face, so on the surface, he was not willing to show it at all. Xia Jiqing seemed to suddenly understand. She had always looked at this matter from her own point of view, but had never looked at it from Bai Junyu's point of view. If she was Bai Junyu, presumably, she would do the same. Her heart, which was originally uncomfortable, seemed to be a lot more comfortable at this moment. Xia Jiqing only felt that the whole person's state was a bit better. Boss, will it really be like this? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. In addition to this answer, there is no other answer. At this moment, Xia Jiqing's face that was previously full of worry finally showed a smile at this moment. Bailey Hongzhuang patted Xia Jiqing's shoulder. This kind of thing should be taken by the man. Jiqing, as long as you don't get entangled in this matter and feel better, it will be fine. I believe that it won't be long before Junyu starts to act. Recalling Di Beichen's confident promise to her before, he would definitely make Bai Junyu feel enlightened, so that his whole person would wake up. Di Beichen had never done anything wrong, and this time would not be an exception. As long as Bai Junyu had the courage, then all of this would not be a problem. Today, she and Di Beichen were going out together. If Bai Junyu and Xia Jiqing were not together, then it would really be a waste of their painstaking efforts. With Bailey Hongzhuang's voice falling, Xia Jiqing looked at Bailey Hongzhuang doubtfully. She always felt that Bailey Hongzhuang's words had a deep meaning. Boss, what do you mean by this? Xia Jiqing couldn't help but ask. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Nothing, you two have been entangled for so long, I also think it's time to solve this problem. Ji Wenshu's appearance is an opportunity. Unfortunately, Ji Wenshu is destined to have no hope. Xia Jiqing only thought that Bailey Hongzhuang meant that because of the appearance of Ji Wenshu, Bai Junyu would feel a little more nervous and didn't think much about it. Bailey Hongzhuang and Xia Jiqing chatted for a long time. All the unhappiness in Xia Jiqing's heart gradually dissipated in the conversation with Bailey Hongzhuang. Boss, you're the best. Xia Jiqing's eyes were filled with warmth. If it weren't for you, my state today would be terrible. No matter what, Boss would always think for her. There were many things that Big Boss could have ignored, but because of her, Big Boss kept helping. She couldn't express her gratitude to her boss with words. She could only repay him slowly with her entire life. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and shook her head. We're good sisters. You're treating me like an outsider. Usually, when I'm in a bad mood, you'll still accompany me. This is what you should do. Xia Jiqing was really her best sister. The two of them had known each other for such a long time. She was also grateful for Xia Jiqing's appearance. She was grateful that Xia Jiqing always supported her and believed in her no matter what. This feeling of being unconditionally trusted was really great. Chapter 1848. After Bailey Hongzhuang talked with Xia Jiqing for a while, she noticed Di Beichen's footsteps approaching. Now she was more and more familiar with Di Beichen. As long as she heard Di Beichen's footsteps, she could judge it. Jiqing, you have a good rest, I'll go back first. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Xia Jiqing nodded slightly and said, Okay, boss, you also have a good rest. After being persuaded by her boss, she had come out of her bad mood and felt a lot better. When Bailey Hongzhuang returned to the house, she saw that Di Beichen was already waiting for her. She chuckled and sat beside Di Beichen. Is the effect achieved? Bailey Hongzhuang asked with a smile. Di Beichen raised his eyebrows. I personally did it, how can it not succeed? Don't worry, this problem will be solved in a few days. Looking at Di Beichen's confident smile, Bailey Hongzhuang's smile couldn't help but widen. Now, as she spent more time with Di Beichen, she found that Di Beichen was a very proud person. Of course, it was only in front of her. A few days later, when Bailey Hongzhuang went to the meditation field to practice, she saw that Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu had a very good relationship. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu suspiciously, but she couldn't help but smile. You are. Noticing Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze, Xia Jiqing's expression changed slightly, but her cheeks couldn't help but blush. Bai Junyu also looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a silly smile. Everything was understood without words. Seeing this scene, Bailey Hongzhuang had already understood. Di Beichen was right. If he said that there would be no problem, then there really would be no problem. Since you have reconciled, I am happy for you. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. Bai Junyu and Xia Jiqing were shy in this regard, so she no longer teased them. The two of them went in circles and waited for more than 3 years before they finally got together. This relationship was really hard to come by. However, with Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu's slow reaction to feelings, there would not be any other problems in the future. Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu's faces were full of smiles. In fact, they now felt like they were soaking in a honey pot, and their whole person was indescribably sweet. Ji Wenshu was very depressed. Originally, he only felt that his pursuit of Xia Jiqing was full of hope. He didn't think that before his actions were fully launched, Xia Jiqing had already been taken. This feeling undoubtedly made him very unhappy. However, at this time, even if he was unhappy, it was of no use. Time passed slowly. Bailey Hongzhuang practiced with Di Beichen in the desert world every night. Even practicing martial arts was practiced in the desert world. Because this was the most time-saving way. However, in the eyes of other cultivators, Bailey Hongzhuang was just practicing during the day and went back to the house to rest at night. It seemed that Bailey Hongzhuang was definitely not the most hardworking among the disciples. On this day, Bailey Hongzhuang slowly walked to the front of the ranking pillar. She successfully broke through to the second stage of the Green Realm last night. At this moment, she could also see her ranking. Chapter 1849. It was reasonable to say that if there was no breakthrough, the general cultivator would not come here to test the ranking. Only after a breakthrough would the cultivator's ranking have a greater improvement. Otherwise, the ranking increase would be extremely slow. If the ranking increase was pitiful, or even there was no change, it would undoubtedly be a joke. In everyone's opinion, Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation time was still short. It was a bit too impatient to retest the ranking now. It is not an easy thing to increase the ranking. Bailey Hongzhuang did not break through at all. The increase in the ranking should be very small, right? I don't know what Bailey Hongzhuang is thinking. If it were me, I would not come to verify the ranking. Yes, even if she and the young lord are going to get married soon, at least she has to maintain her image. Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu also looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with doubts. They came earlier than Bailey Hongzhuang in the morning. They only saw Bailey Hongzhuang come to the arena and then went directly to the ranking pillar. Therefore, they did not know what Bailey Hongzhuang was thinking. Xia Jiqing frowned slightly and looked at Bai Junyu with doubts. Junyu, do you think the boss has broken through again? Others did not know the boss well, but she knew. The boss had never been a person who spoke without thinking. Since the boss chose to do this, then she must have her reasons. However, when she thought of this possibility, she felt that it was really too incredible. The boss was already at the first level of the Green Realm. As everyone knew, the more a cultivator cultivated, the more difficult it was to improve their cultivation. With Bailey Hongzhuang's current cultivation, it was undoubtedly extremely difficult to improve one level. Bai Junyu glanced at Xia Jiqing and his expression changed a bit. He pondered and said, maybe, it is really possible. After knowing each other for such a long time, all kinds of impossible things had happened to Bailey Hongzhuang. Although this matter was unbelievable, he still felt that this was the most likely. With Bai Junyu's voice falling, Xia Jiqing did not say much. Actually, her thoughts were the same as Bai Junyu's. She just felt that it was too unbelievable. During this period of time, Bailey Hongzhuang had not tested the changes in her strength. Her ranking had dropped from 300th to 350th. Just from the degree of change in this ranking, one could see the excellence of the Tiangang sect cultivators. In just 2 short months, there were already so many cultivators who had surpassed Bailey Hongzhuang in ranking. Soon, Bailey Hongzhuang's test was over. Then, Bailey Hongzhuang's ranking began to change under the astonished gazes of the disciples. It rose rapidly from the 350th place to the 280th place. It seemed like she had only increased by 20 places compared to her original result of 300th place. However, in reality, Bailey Hongzhuang had surpassed 70 cultivators. Everyone clearly noticed the words Level 2 of the Green Realm, written beside Bailey Hongzhuang's name. An indescribable shock and astonishment spread in the hearts of everyone. Oh my God, only a month has passed and Bailey Hongzhuang actually broke through to the 2nd level of the Green Realm? It is difficult to break through to the Green Realm. How did Bailey Hongzhuang do it? Chapter 1850. A puzzled gaze was fixed on Bailey Hongzhuang's body. Everyone really couldn't understand how Bailey Hongzhuang cultivated. It was clear that many cultivators spent more time in meditation than Bailey Hongzhuang, but their speed of improvement was not as fast as Bailey Hongzhuang. Could it be that the young sect master gave a lot of precious cultivation resources to Bailey Hongzhuang? At this time, everyone could only think of this possibility. In addition, they really couldn't figure out how Bailey Hongzhuang did it. Maybe, with the young sect master's love for Bailey Hongzhuang, it is also very normal to do this. I really envy Bailey Hongzhuang. Usually, we only have so many cultivation resources. How can we compare with Bailey Hongzhuang? Everyone sighed faintly. They all envied the young sect master for having such a proud identity. Whether it was the successor of a sect or an aristocratic family, they didn't need to worry about cultivation resources at all. However, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't have such an identity, but she could also have such cultivation resources. It was really too enviable. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced around and noticed everyone's envious and jealous eyes. She didn't care and walked to the position next to Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu and sat down. Boss, your cultivation speed is too heaven-defying. Xia Jiqing shook her head. She was almost used to all this, but every time such a thing happened, she still couldn't help but exclaim. Speaking of which, she and Bai Junyu had been cultivating day and night during this time, but their speed was still left behind by Bailey Hongzhuang. It was really infuriating. Bai Junyu didn't want to talk at the moment. Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation speed couldn't be judged by common sense. At least, except for Bailey Hongzhuang, he had never seen anyone with such an amazing cultivation speed. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. In fact, she had been cultivating for a long time, but she couldn't say it out loud. In a few days, she would be going to Limitless Palace to cultivate. Before that, she hoped that she could improve her strength. Long ago, she had already heard from Bewitching that her master was a peerless genius and extremely powerful. As her master's disciple, she naturally had to work harder. No matter what, she would not let anyone doubt her master's foresight. Boss, these people are just sour grapes. You don't have to care about what they think. Xia Jiqing looked at Bailey Hongzhuang worriedly. She knew how hard her boss had worked in order to be a match for Bewitching. However, other people would always use other ways to interpret boss's efforts. Thinking about it, boss wouldn't feel good after hearing these words. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. It's alright. Don't worry about it. In fact, the reason why she could be promoted to Green Realm Level 2 in this short period of time was indeed with the help of cultivation resources. If her grandfather hadn't given her enough cultivation resources, it would have taken some time for her to break through. In such calm and comfortable days, 3 months slowly passed. On this day, Bailey Hongzhuang stood in front of Di Beichen. Beichen, 3 months have passed. It's time for me to go to Limitless Palace. Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Chapter 1851. I'll send you to Limitless Palace. Di Beichen naturally knew about this matter. He believed that Limitless Palace Master would definitely teach Hongzhuang a lot of useful things. Limitless Palace Master and Hongzhuang were both cultivators of the Lan family. Presumably, Limitless Palace Master would have a better understanding of the Rainbow Pearl. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang thought for a moment and said, "You have a lot of things to deal with in Tiangang sect. Now, Master won't appear for most of the things. Isn't it bad for you to leave like this? You've already brought me to Limitless Palace last time. I know how to get there." Di Beichen smiled slightly. He reached out and touched Bailey Hongzhuang's silky black hair. His eyes were filled with pampering light. "You know how much Master values you. If I don't send you there, Master won't be at ease." Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly. Her eyes were filled with a hint of surprise. "I've already told Master yesterday. Master asked me to send you there. Tiangang sect hasn't had any problems recently. All the elders are in good order. You can rest assured." Bailey Hongzhuang raised her head and saw Di Beichen's smile that was brighter than the sun. Her beautiful face also bloomed with a smile. "Then let's set off together." This feeling of having Di Beichen by her side at all times was really great. After the two of them made their decision, they immediately led the three beasts towards the direction of Limitless Palace. Qin Ai already knew that Bailey Hongzhuang would leave after cultivating in Vermilion Bird Palace Hall for 3 months. Therefore, she didn't need to say anything. When the three beasts left, they were somewhat reluctant to part with He Mu. After all, Master and Di Beichen were too crazy when cultivating. He Mu was the easiest to bully. Seeing the three beasts relying on He Mu, Bailey Hongzhuang thought for a moment and decided to call He Mu along. After all, she would have to learn from her master and mistress when the time came, and she might not be able to take good care of the beasts. With Darkwood around, there was no need to worry. Xiao He and Xiao Bai sat on He Mu's shoulders. As Baisher grew bigger, he could no longer be held in his arms. In a short span of 3 months, Tiangang sect's food was excellent, and the supply of demon crystals had never been cut off. Therefore, Baisher's body was now as big as a golden retriever. However, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at White Lion, who was growing bigger and bigger. She felt that White Lion was not far from becoming her mount. This was because White Lion's body had been growing rapidly ever since then. Compared to its furry and extremely cute appearance in the past, the current White Lion had an additional majestic aura. The White Lion, which was entirely white, looked very beautiful. It gradually lost its previous chubby figure and became strong and mighty. Especially that pair of sharp and threatening eyes, no one dared to underestimate them. Similarly, as its body grew bigger, White Lion could eat more and more. This time, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen did not go to Limitless Palace with the mentality of sightseeing. Instead, they rushed there as fast as they could. Because there was no news from Shirtian Pavilion for a long time, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's feelings became more and more complicated. They had already made a decision. If there was still no news after a while, they could only go to Clan and turn it upside down. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.